Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Coming to you on Monday, May 6th, Galaxy 0-0 draw against the Seattle Sounders up in Seattle. Was it a boring game? Was it a slow game? Was it the turf? Was Vanney wearing a shirt? All the important questions need to be asked, including, did the Galaxy need Ricky Puig that badly? Maybe, maybe not. Let's talk about it. Talk about some of the performances that happened. We got a lot to get to, and in order to help me out with all of that today, we're glad to have him back. His video camera's actually working this time. Welcome back. It's Kevin the Panda Baxter. Kev, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm not so sure this is an improvement.
No. People maybe the people like the airbrushed, LA Times photo that you had that is like taken 10 years ago, makes you look a lot younger.
Anything could make me look a lot younger. So I'm looking forward to this weekend. Pupusas and bobbleheads. It can't get much better.
I mean, it can. Maybe there'll be an exciting soccer game. Maybe Greg Vanney will actually go shirtless, Kevin. I mean, it looked like he was going shirtless in Seattle. He was sort of like, and I was joking around, but I said, Greg Vanney said, it's too cold for just a shirt, but too hot for a shirt and a jacket. So I'll just go with the jacket, right? That's how many times did it show him on the sideline? He looked like he wasn't wearing a shirt. I was convinced at one point that he wasn't wearing a shirt. And that's what dominated most of my timeline for the entire game, was people wondering whether or not Greg Vanney had a shirt. Because
that was kind of the most exciting part.
Yeah, it absolutely was. Mr. Provino, $10 super chat gets in early. Shirtless Vanney with an ascot needs explanation. The next time Vanney is on the pod, we need an AI generated painting of shirtless Vanney with ascot riding a horse across the plains. I'm in on that. Somebody pop that one in and get it going. I was really, this is stupid, Kevin. I'll share it, but this is stupid. You know how sometimes you hope that the team you're covering is going to win, so that way you can ask a stupid question, right? You're like, I can ask this question if they win, and win comfortably, and they're in a good mood. Like, I can ask this question, and then I can't ask this question if they draw or they lose, right? There's levels, right? You have to be careful. So I was secretly hoping the Galaxy would win that game by 5 or 6-0, so I could be like, Greg, are you wearing a shirt under your jacket? I wanted to know that, but thankfully, when he came into the press conference, he took said jacket off. There was indeed a cashmere tan sweater on underneath. It was just, for whatever reason, the way it looked on TV, it didn't look like he was wearing a shirt. That's all.
Did you let him in on the whole controversy?
I did not.
America was talking about it?
I did not. Again, I felt like perhaps not the correct time. I mean, I would say talking to him afterwards, he was fairly pleased with the result, and I can understand why. We can talk about that, but he was fairly pleased with it. But it still didn't feel like I had my answer. I didn't need to, play into it. But Kevin Acevedo, who's in charge of comms right now, put out a tweet. He says, basically goes in and talks about the Galaxy's road record and everything else that was sort of going on. He goes, and additionally, I can confirm that Greg Vanney was wearing a cashmere sweater in today's match. It was the big talking point among the game, which when you're missing 4 starters, maybe that's the more important talking point for everything. But you saw it? Did it look like he was wearing a shirt, or did it not look like he was wearing a shirt? And were you scratching your head? I don't know.
I was not. I was actually paying attention to the game.
Oh, sure.
Might want to try that next week.
Whatever.
I was
paying
actually
attention.
more interested. I was more paying attention to Brian Smetzer's demeanor on the sideline. Boy, he looked upset a
He was
lot.
not happy. Yeah, he was not. Well, very reminiscent of like Greg Vanney last year, which is like pointing, being like, they should have put the ball over there, and instead they did this. I mean, we can talk about this game, and I think we should. Galaxy 0-0 draw against Seattle. The Galaxy have not won in Seattle since 2016. So, trying to get a win there was going to be a lot. The Galaxy show up with 4 starters out. We knew of basically, I think 3 that we were kind of questioning, right? We knew Joveljic was going to be rested because Greg Vanney talked about that on Friday. He was saying, hey, that's not happening. Joveljic still on the shelf, and he said, I want to shut him down for 1 more week. So we have that. We had the Ricky Puig, who was suspended on yellow cards. And then we had Martin Cáceres, which was he had a pain procedure for some nerve pain that he had on, and they were going to see how he reacted. Well, apparently they didn't need to push him. They decided that Jalen Neal was going to be the better starter there, so he was out. But the one we were surprised, which really threw in all of the guesses on the starting lineup whenever you remove this person, was Mark Delgado, who was in health and safety protocols, as per
Now,
the
we need
Galaxy.
to say that Cáceres was there and available and was on the bench. The other 3 didn't make the trip.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. Your entire Cáceres wasn't on the bench. He was he didn't even make the bench.
Oh, I thought he made
shut
the
him
trip.
down.
Okay.
He may have made the trip, but I don't think they decided to start him. Garces actually ended up making his first bench. So Amiro Garces was there, and Vanney talked about him being on the trip, and they wanted to take him on the trip because they wanted to show him everything that was going on. So that's what it is. So you had 4 basically, starters that weren't starting, and so all the ideas of sort of, hey, moving perhaps Diego Fagundes up top and not starting Miguel Berry, I think went out the window whenever Delgado wasn't included in there. And can we say that, Kevin? This is speculation because it is speculation. Health and safety protocols could mean a lot of things. It could mean he had the flu. It could mean anything. But we're used to that being like COVID. During COVID time is when that came about.
Let's say the health and safety protocols was invented during COVID to explain when people had COVID.
Yes.
So it's probably pretty safe to assume
Maybe
if someone in the health and safety protocols, they might have COVID.
They might have. I think that's fair. They might have COVID, and however else that goes around. But it was a little bit of a flashback. I asked the LA Galaxy. I got back the health and safety protocols. I'm like, oh man, what year is it? Is it 2020, 2021 again? What's going on? So that was interesting to see that. So your starting lineup then, Kevin, ended up being from the back, John McCarthy, Miki Amane, Maya Yoshida. Jalen Neal gets his first start. That's his first start since a July 30th game, and that was in Leagues Cup. I think the last time he played 90 minutes for the LA Galaxy before that was actually at the end of May. And so Jalen Neal has not played soccer for the LA Galaxy, 90 minutes worth of soccer, and started a game in a very, very long time. So that was an interesting one to see him play. And by the way, I think did a really good job. You had Julian Aude out on the left side, and then Diego Fagundes sort of more in the middle than anything. Gaston Brugman right there, sort of next to Fagundes. Edwin Cerrillo playing that defensive midfielder position, and then you had Paintsel on the right, you had Peck on the left, and you had Miguel Berry in tap dead center there. So that was your starting lineup. Again, not having Delgado to me sort of goes, oh, you have to change more things, right? And so you had to sort of tweak some things. And I think that's why perhaps Diego Fagundes didn't get that start either at forward, or they didn't move Joseph Paintsel into the center as a forward, even though he played there a little bit towards the end of the second half. But let's just put this in a situation here, Kevin. You're down 4 starters. You're playing Seattle, who is a revived Seattle. They are playing better, and you can certainly look at them and say, okay, they're a better team than they were than they started the season at. You still didn't know who was going to show up after having played in Philadelphia, I think, on Tuesday night. And so they come all the way back and play in this game. They were missing Alex Roldan, and so Christian Roldan went back and I think played in that back right spot for Alex. So there was something there, and then you get a 0-0 draw out of it. Just if you didn't watch the game, if you're the LA Galaxy, knowing you're missing 4 starters, knowing that you're sort of in a bind on a couple different positions, is 0-0 acceptable for what you're trying to do against Seattle, even though Seattle may be good, maybe bad?
Well, here's what I think, and you and I talked about this, and I know we're going to disagree, but the point away at Seattle any time is good, regardless of whether Seattle is struggling, coming back, whether the Galaxy are missing 11 starters. A point in Seattle is always a good thing. So there's that. But we've been talking since the beginning of the season about this team's lack of depth. And I know their 4 starters are down. They had to go to the bench for 4 guys. And I think that they just showed that they're not that deep, and that, Vanney didn't even make a substitution until the 86th minute. Why? Well, the guys on the field were better than the guys on the bench, even when they were tired. But I think where this really comes home to roost, Ricky Puig is almost irreplaceable. So that was a big loss. But the big one still is Dejan Joveljic. They had not been shut out. The Galaxy had not been shut out all season until Joveljic missed his first game in Austin. Now they've gone 214 minutes without a goal. They've been shut out twice. Joveljic has only missed 2 games. The 2 games they missed are the ones that they don't score. Miguel Berry got his first shot on goal in the second half of this game. So, good job there. He finally got a shot on goal. But it's just clear he is not the replacement for Joveljic that they're going to need. Joveljic has a hip problem. It's there's a lot of games left to play. I would anticipate he's going to miss some more, just needing to rest that hip. He's probably going to go away on national duty some this summer with Serbia. So the Galaxy, I do think, have a depth problem, and especially up front. And I think they're going to either have to find a different way to play to alleviate that, or they're going to have to find another replacement, someone that can step in front of Miguel Berry and play behind Joveljic, because he's going to miss more games this season. And as you can see, that the offense just totally drops off. One more thing I wanted to say. The other thing we were talking about all season was the Galaxy could not defend set pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Seattle had 12 corners in this game and didn't score.
Right. Well, and the last team that they shut out and didn't allow anybody to score on set pieces was also, Seattle in that game, right? So I don't know. Maybe it's just Seattle that they're good. They're
and
good.
John McCarthy has 2 shutouts, both against Seattle.
Both against Seattle, right? The whole deal. I will say this. I don't disagree that, and I think that anybody would have to be blind to say that Miguel Berry is the solution there to back up Joveljic. It doesn't seem that that's the case. I think the Galaxy have at least one player in them during the summer. I don't know if that will be a direct backup, or whether that will be, a winger that also plays some forward and that does some things and gives the Galaxy some more flexibility in what they try to do there. I agree with that. But you can't say they have a depth problem when they start 4 guys who normally don't start. And for the most part, the Galaxy don't miss a beat. And I'm going to say this. I thought Ricky Puig being gone, obviously a big hit for that. But watching Joseph Paintsel and watching Gabriel Peck miss on good chances in this game really was sort of more telling to me than Ricky Puig. I thought that especially Peck wasted a bunch of opportunities. The Galaxy were always going to be what I will say is a situationally careful team in this game. They knew that they didn't have all of their players. They knew that it was a little bit of a makeshift lineup with where they were playing guys. I think they still felt confident within that. You could see little sprinkles of quick passing, quick moving, all the things. It's like the Galaxy were always one pass away from having a really good chance, and then they would pass it 3 more times, right? It was like here comes the next pass, and it's like, oh wait, you're going to pass it 2 or 3 more times. Okay, I didn't realize. But there was some good interchange there. I actually thought the Galaxy created some chances that were never capitalized on, like never with good shots, never with timing or anything else. And to me, that's a Paintsel issue. That's a Peck issue. You look a little bit at Brugman. I thought Brugman did well in distributing and playing. I thought Diego Fagundes played a really good game, just at doing what they were asking him to do and sort of combining. Miguel Berry was always going to be that. But remember that Dejan Joveljic also rarely touches the ball in most of the LA Galaxy's games. And when he does, they tend to go in the back of the net. That's the positive of Dejan Joveljic. But you can't tell me that, Dejan plays so much better in the build-up than Miguel Berry. No, neither of them have been playing in the build-up so far. But I think missing Ricky Puig and the ability to break some lines really is probably the big difference there. But if you're not hanging some of the blame of the Galaxy, having almost like a 0.5 expected goals in this game, I think a 0.43 on some of the sites, but a 0.43, and you're not looking at somebody like Joseph Paintsel, and you're not looking at somebody like Gabriel Peck, who had chances, who hit bad shots whenever they had the chances, to put the Galaxy in. To me, that was the big disappointment in this. It was a tactically careful game. The Galaxy were never going to try to expose themselves so that way Seattle could come and counter, and Seattle, who definitely needed the win, Kevin, at home, seem to be just more passive than I expected. 1.5, I think, for their expected goals. But I mean, outside of a couple, semi-decent chances, I don't think that they really pressured the LA Galaxy. One of those, John McCarthy passed the ball to him and then made a great save right after. So for me, it's like I watched that game and I said the Galaxy were always going to be careful, but they blew some chances they had, and that wasn't because Ricky Puig wasn't there. That was because Paintsel and Peck were not performing.
Well, I mean, when you talk about Seattle, it's the same names. It's Morris and it's Rui Diaz and it's Zhao and it's Yamar and Stefan Fry, and they're just not playing well. And I don't know if they got old really fast. I have trouble believing Brian Smetzer all of a sudden became a bad coach. I don't think that's it. So I don't know what's going on there. But as far as the Galaxy are concerned, I mean, Ricky Puig is just such a dynamic player. He's hard to replace. And we've talked a lot about some of his shortcomings this year. He kind of got a little bit too showboatish. He's tried to do some things and force some things that weren't there. But regardless, you're right. He does break lines. The offense goes through him every time down. He's just very dynamic. And you have some good players, behind him, but they're just not. There's only one Ricky Puig.
Yeah, you can't find that guy in Major League Soccer. That's it.
And so it does change. The Galaxy may set up in the same formation and may have the same strategy, but it does change the way they play. And I do think that the two remaining killer P's, Paintsel and Peck, you're right. I mean, the idea of the extra pass that just jumped out at me. Every time a guy was open to shoot, he wanted to pass. But in the case of Peck and Paintsel, when they took some of those bad shots, I felt like they were trying to do too much. I felt like Puig was out and Dayan was out, and someone had to step up. That old cudgel, someone has to step up. And when players are hurt, I just felt like both of those guys were forcing it. You're right to mention Fagundes, though. I think Fagundes is going to wind up being one of the more valuable players on this team this season because we
talked about that. Yeah, preseason.
He can fit in at a number of different places. He can fill a number of different roles. He's not really a starter. Well, he is now with the injuries, but if the best 11 are there, he's not a starter. So he's a guy that's going to come off the bench and change games. But when there are injuries, you could plug him in at least 3, maybe 4 spots.
Yeah, certainly. Super chat from Lasso, $10 super chat. Evening, gents. Well, that one was tough to watch. Really only expected Ricky's absence. Guess this was one to clinch and hold on to the ropes. Happy for the point, though. Go G's. So you had that in there. I'll tell you, there were some solid performances on this field from LA Galaxy folks. One is Jalen Neal coming back. Hasn't played 90 minutes. Got to talk to him after the game a little bit. I said, welcome back. Like, I go, this must feel, he said he felt strong the whole game. He's watched the games. He's thought that the Galaxy's defense has been actually pretty good in the run of play the whole year. He goes, we just really needed to tighten some things up on set pieces. He goes, so I'm glad that I could come and contribute. He had a couple really, really good tackles. One towards the end there where the ball was floated over and it almost looked like, I think it might've been Rusnak who actually tried to take the shot and it looked like the shot went wide or something like that. And you're like, man, I can't believe he missed that. And then you go watch the replay. It was Jalen Neal's left foot getting on the ball that cleared that out. So inches from basically allowing Rusnak to score in some of these games. So Jalen Neal, I thought, was outstanding for a guy who hasn't played. Greg Vanney said afterwards, we could nitpick his performance, but really, he goes, it was just good to have him back. So
John McCarthy was really good too, I thought.
John McCarthy, well, I mean, yes and no. He had some bonehead plays. He had the big bonehead one that he made 5 saves on the night. Stefan Fry made 4 saves. Again, we can talk about how Seattle probably created higher quality chances and better chances to score. But overall, the Galaxy also created about the same number of shots on goal, that type of thing. And I say shots on goal, not shots. I believe Seattle had more shots. But when we look at this game, I thought that John McCarthy was a good shot stopper. We can talk about his stats here in a little bit, but I wanted to get to one more guy before we really sort of went out there. It's Julian Aude. That kid all of a sudden knows how to play defense.
It's just good because he's a defender.
It is.
That's a helpful skill to have.
It is. It's really good. I think that Aude has been outstanding. For me, I think he was player of the match for the LA Galaxy. I thought he was great on tackles, great on everything. I know Kevin Acevedo tweeted out some stats on him just in terms of what he's done. But Aude has won 8 of 12 duels, 3 possessions and 2 tackles, recorded 5 clearances, and completed 2 dribbles in 90 minutes of action. Aude ranks tied for 9th in MLS in fouls suffered, 24 this season. So not only is he playing good defense, I think he's making smart decisions. He's being more physical, which is something that we were looking at over the past couple, over last year and this year. Is, you know, he needed to be more physical. He needed to not just fall down every time. I think he's starting to do that. And not only that, but he's drawing fouls. He has that technical ability, Kevin, that I think we sort of saw at the very beginning to be able to cut and dribble through people. And we saw a couple of the times for that one. For me, he's been just outstanding. Just outstanding. And it's fun to see those guys sort of level up. It's like Jalen Neal comes back, has a great performance. Young kid in there playing. What's next for Jalen Neal? Guess what? Jalen Neal probably earned himself another start. Here you go. Rock and roll, you know, and now it's going to be Garces and Neal, and they're going to be fighting for probably that second spot. When does Garces get on the field? That's going to be an interesting one to watch too, because I think that's coming sooner rather than later. Guy's already in soccer shape. So let's see how that plays out.
Well, a couple of things. FOTMOB, by the way, gave player of the match to Stephen Fry, who wasn't even supposed to play. That it was an MLS decision in the midweek that his suspension was, I guess, reduced a game, so he was able to play. And FOTMOB gave him the player of the match. Aude had a 7.6 rating though. As far as the center back pairing, I mean, we have a situation coming up where the Galaxy, we're going to talk about their schedule in a minute, but just briefly to talk about that, you have Cáceres, who's hurt, Neal, who's probably going to need a blow now and again because he's coming back from an injury, and then Garces, who's trying to get his feet wet. And those guys, all three guys are, not competing. They fill the center back role next to Yoshida. And the Galaxy have a game Saturday. They have a game Wednesday rather. Then that's on the road. Then they have to fly to Charlotte. So their longest trip for the first half of the season. So they have 3 games in a week, and 2 of them are on the road. One of them's a long trip. I would imagine all 3 of those guys are going to get some playing. If Cáceres is healthy, all 3 of those guys will see some action.
Yeah, another guy who definitely deserves, I think, a little tip of the cap. I thought Edwin Cerrillo was really good. And again, I talked to John McCarthy after the game about Cerrillo and says, he goes, every time he's called upon, he can come out there and play a really good match for us. So he's comfortable there. Cerrillo is another young kid who just seems to be sort of blossoming into, a really good MLS player. And whenever they got him, there was sort of the idea that he was going to be a starter sooner rather than later. And so you see him in the roles that he's in, his ability to pass quickly, to play some pretty good defense. He still has his moments, as anybody does. If you're a defender, you're going to get beat on a fairly regular basis, and that's just how life is. It's one of those. That's how goals get scored, right? So when a goal gets scored, the defense gets blamed. So you see that from Cerrillo. I thought Cerrillo was great. Really interesting moment with Cerrillo, which he gets speared in the knee by a studs-up tackle early in that game, has to go down. There's blood drawn on it, and actually there should have been a yellow card on that. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that should have been a yellow card. Either Taylor Twellman and Jake Ziven were out there saying that's probably a yellow card as well. And so then he sort of has to play through the rest of the game with that injury. He does a good job for all that, but I think that play there just sort of spoke to the slowness of the entire game. I thought it was interesting that the broadcast crew for Apple there was trying to say about how they thought that the Taylor Twellman especially said, oh, well, the ball's moving quicker than it normally does on the turf here. I thought from the very minute they kicked that ball off that the ball was like sticking to the grass there.
Well, and Vanney said the same thing.
Well, I mean, it's nice to know I'm not freaking crazy like half the time, because I'm like, what are you talking about? I go, this is so slow. And I would not be surprised, and this is totally a speculation on my part, is that Seattle said, don't water the grass. Do not water the grass. Do not let that ball get quick, because the Galaxy are the quicker team. Do not let that ball be quicker than how we can run. We're not as quick as the Galaxy. And I think that really sort of... Greg Vanney talked about it. He said it's slow, it's soft and spongy out there, right? And with the ball sticking to it the way it is, I could see, he said he thought it sapped the energy out of both teams. He said that he thought it wasn't a very offensive game because both teams were playing on that same field. He was not a fan of that field at all, but I could watch it during the game and watch how passes would come up a little short, how it seemed like the ball like grabs and grips. You want it to sort of skip across the grass. You don't want the grass to be this high friction, model here. You want low friction so the ball is constantly moving and it's quickly. And if you go to a Galaxy game and you see that they water the grass, and they water grass for turf too, so that way the turf isn't as sticky. I just wonder, one, were they expecting rain and that's why they didn't water it? Or two, did they not water it because they knew that that would be a faster ball and they didn't want the Galaxy to play any faster balls?
Well, rain in Seattle is such an unusual thing.
Yeah, I know. It was one. Well, I saw the weather forecast said that it was going to rain. It didn't. But there was a chance that it was going to rain. So, it was one of those. But I just always wonder the gamesmanship that comes in there. It's like, hey, do you leave the grass a little bit longer whenever you have a team that's faster than you? You don't want them to be able to run faster, so you slow the ball down. Do you not water the turf so that way the ball doesn't skip across it? It plays a little slower, so that way you can keep the Galaxy in front of you too.
Well, yeah, that's an old thing they used to do in baseball. If you have a ground ball pitcher, you always let the grass get high. So, because it's going to be a lot of ground balls. And if you have a team that bunts, you always cut the grass really low because that way the ball moves faster on the bunt. But, Seattle was the one that I thought you mentioned both teams are definitely affected by it. But there were more than a few Seattle passes where guys were making runs toward the box where the ball was just hit too hard. And it was almost like they were expecting that ball to hold up in the grass and they just hit it too hard. And the player making the run never came close to it. That happened at least 2 or 3 times from the Seattle side.
Yeah, you could see. I think it took the Galaxy a while to get too used to it. The wind was blowing a lot, I guess, at the beginning of that game. So pretty windy for a little bit. So just interesting to see. I mean, I thought Fagundes played fine. Berry was a big, massive black hole there. And I don't know that you expected anything else. I don't expect anything else from that. I did expect more out of Peck. I thought Peck had an underwhelming performance on the night. And then you can look at Gaston Brugman, who I think played fine. I think Cerrillo was good. I thought Paintsel was disappointing for me. I thought Yoshida played pretty good. Yamane was good. It was nice to see Yamane back and comfortable in there. You were talking about John McCarthy. John McCarthy is this enigma to me, and I'm not sure what he is, Kevin, but the stats say that he's actually pretty good whenever it all comes down to things. But I always concerned, one, the distribution isn't great, and I don't really care about that as long as he understands that the best decision at 9 times out of 10 when you're under pressure is to clear the ball, because I'm not one that's passing out of the back is like the most important thing. I don't want you to get caught in possession. He had one just absolutely baffling clearance yesterday when the ball came back to him, and I think he could have laid it off to either Yoshida or Yamane. There was somebody on the right-hand side. They were literally 10 yards from them, and instead he just booted it up the field. And Greg Vanney stood there with like his hands up in the air, and like players were looking around like, what the heck just happened? That ball ended up coming back at the Galaxy pretty quick, as usually happens. But what do you make of John McCarthy? Upgrade over Jonathan Bond? I mean, this is an interesting, nuanced argument for John McCarthy, I think.
Well, I mean, he made an amazing save, I thought, on Rui Diaz on a free kick. That was just laid out, made an amazing save. I saw him play a lot last year for LAFC. And so my book on John McCarthy is super funny guy. I think he's wildly popular with his teammates. And I mean this in an endearing way, he's kind of goofy. He's really funny, but he's kind of goofy. And you sometimes see that on the field where I don't want to say he takes plays off, but sometimes there's like a lack of focus or concentration, or he thinks he sees something that's not there. So with John McCarthy, you always have to be prepared for 1 or 2 or maybe 3 moments in the game where he's going to do something inexplicable. And he's not going to, if you talk to him afterwards, he's like, either he realizes quickly that he made a mistake or he's not quite sure what happened on that play. And that's just John McCarthy. You take the good and the bad.
Right.
And I thought he was excellent at setting up the defense on the corner kicks. He has 2 shutouts this year. They're both against Seattle. I don't know what that means. There is going to be some splitting of time in goal this year. Greg Vanney said that already. But right now, McCarthy seems like the hot hand. And I do think right now he's an upgrade over Jonathan Bond. But I would say the one thing you're not going to see from him is that calming sort of the Jaime Pinedo presence where nothing's getting through. This guy's a brick wall. Every time that the opposing team comes down on offense, you got to look at McCarthy and say, okay, is this one of those moments where he's going to kind of lose it, or is he locked in? And that's just John McCarthy. I think I think the Galaxy have upgraded at goal. I think McCarthy's a great guy. He's a great clubhouse guy. He's not Stephen Fry, and he's not Jaime Pinedo. And you can read into that whatever you want.
Right. Well, The Athletic published sort of the top shot stoppers here in Major League Soccer. I would like to point out that of the 29 goalkeepers minimum 900 minutes that are on this list, It is John McCarthy who has the highest goals prevented number and overall in their top list, ranked number 5 in the league in shot stoppers. You have some bigger names in terms of Steve Clark and Zach McMath, Joe Willis with Nashville. All very good goalkeepers in there, and then it's basically John McCarthy. And who's the Cincinnati keeper? I really can't even read the graphics on this one, only because it's so tiny for what it is. But I was just sort of more focused on what Jonathan Bond was, or what John McCarthy was, and I was interested to see sort of how the Galaxy were gonna go about that, and how he sort of fit in there. So it's Celentano. Oh, that's right, Celentano.
Yeah.
Yep.
Celentano.
Yeah, I was trying to zoom
Very
in
good
on it.
goalkeeper as
yeah,
well.
yeah, very good, right? The whole deal. And so you sort of the goals prevention rate for Celentano is 2.1. McCarthy is at 1.3. So you can sort of look at where those are. But bottom line is they're saying that, from where shots were taken and everything, that John McCarthy has been basically the best goalkeeper in goals prevented, this year for the LA Galaxy. So, I mean, the numbers seem to like him. I think the distribution argument is certainly a good argument. I think that you look at him and you would hope that the distribution is better. But it's a really interesting one. By the way, the chat room would like me to point out that Hugo Lloris is the 29th best goalkeeper according to The Athletic, out of 29 teams.
I thought he was a 2-time World Cup champion.
He seems that way. Minus 2.6, I believe, minus 2.61 in goals prevented. That means he's given 2.6 goals, right? He's allowed in those instead of prevented. So it's definitely an interesting. I'm just waiting. I want to see more numbers. I want to see more John McCarthy. I really like him. I think I agree with everything that you said in terms of a really fun presence. I think he's a fun locker room guy that everybody really likes. I believe this team is very much like each other. I know that people on Twitter and in the chat room are going to pull up different things where like, oh, this player doesn't like this person, and that I don't think that that's the case in most of this team. I believe they actually like each other. Which is something that I think comes in championship teams. You don't have to have it, but I think more often than not, you find guys who really enjoy playing with each other. Whenever you get to the level of a professional sports, you're like, oh no, this is a good locker room. For the most part, I think it's a pretty good locker room. So I think John McCarthy's a big reason for that. Maya Yoshida is probably a big reason for that. There's some other guys you could probably. Eric Zavaleta is probably a big reason for that. Diego Fagundes is probably a big reason for that. I'm trying to think of who else I could sort of pull out as the leaders on the Gaston Brugman, I would say, is one of those guys.
McCarthy is. We talk about him again. He's one of those guys where I think when the ball goes past the back line, everyone turns around to see where McCarthy is and what he's doing. Is he focused? But I mean, he's the perfect guy for this team because at times that front line or the back line rather, right in front of him, those guys are speaking 3 different languages, and McCarthy has to work with them as the goalkeeper. And he's just one of those guys that's unfazed by that kind of stuff. He's just whatever. He just everything just rolls off his back. And on one hand, that's just who he is, and that's just part of the mix. And at times, it's really good because he lets that stuff go. At times, It's like you wish your goalkeeper was a little bit more steady, but that's who he is. And it's working. He's got 2 shutouts.
But so for me. And I go and look at this game, Kevin. For me, I think the point was a well-earned point. I thought the Galaxy were tactically savvy. I thought that they were understanding of the situation that they were in. I think they understood the stadium that they were in, and quite honestly, they were in a position to steal points. And when you are playing with down 4 guys and you don't have all your starters and you're on the road against somebody like Seattle, who usually plays very well in Seattle, maybe not this year, but I mean, you still have to count the Seattle team as pretty good. In my mind, they're going to be an okay team. I saw them play against Philadelphia. I saw them the DC United game, even though they lost. There was the red card in there with Stephen Fry and that type of thing, right? That eventually got overturned because it wasn't a red card. It's funny how that happens so often in soccer games now. You'd think with VAR they wouldn't be so stupid, but hey, it seems to be happening still. But you go and watch the Seattle team. I think for the position they're in, they're happy to get the point. Greg Vanney certainly was content with the point. Yeah, I think that they would have liked to create some more chances, but I think he was like, get out of here. Get out of here with this point. Get out of here off this field that was difficult to play in. Get out of here down 4 starters. And for my mind, you went from a team that looked like absolute crap against Austin, where if I would have missed that game, which I caught most of it, but if I would have missed it, I wouldn't have missed anything, Kevin, because you just had to take everything that happened in that Austin game and throw it away because it was such a bad, poor game. I didn't see that in the Seattle game. I think the Seattle game actually gives the Galaxy some momentum. It was boring for, I think, people watching, but in terms of a tactical chess match type of thing, I think it played out probably the way that Greg Vanney sort of wanted against Brian Schmetzer. And I think Brian Schmetzer was upset that Seattle didn't capitalize on a couple of the good chances they had.
Well, I think he's looking at this from the fact that he needs 3 points. He's at home against a team that hasn't won there since 2016, a team missing 4 starters.
Yep.
That is, it's almost like that's a game Seattle has to win.
And they didn't. And the Galaxy continued to get points. So the Galaxy now with 11 points, 3-2-2 on their road trip so far. The 11 points is tied for the third best road record in Major League Soccer. Right now, the best road team, Cincinnati, with 13 points, Minnesota with 12 points, and then Real Salt Lake, who is the LA Galaxy's opponent coming up this weekend, and the LA Galaxy have 11 points, along with Colorado has 11 points. Interesting from those road games. So tied for third with the best record in Major League Soccer on the road. The funny thing is, though, Kevin, I keep expecting the Galaxy to have this long homestand because they've been playing so many games on the road, and it doesn't seem like it ever pops up or comes back or nothing. If we look at the schedule right now, the LA Galaxy home to Real Salt Lake coming up on Saturday, May 11th. That's the day before Mother's Day. Just reminding everybody, in case you forgot, still have some time.
Hey, Jalen Neal bobblehead for Mother's Day would be a great present.
That's what my wife is getting. I'm sure Mrs. Panda's getting the same. The LA Galaxy RSL. Then the Galaxy, by the way, number 1 in the Western Conference, Real Salt Lake right now. We've been talking about them. Chicho Arango has been playing very, very, very well. The Galaxy will host Real Salt Lake, who has a very good road record, as I've just mentioned. So that's going to be quite the game. And then the team that is currently above the LA Galaxy in the Western Conference as well, Minnesota. The Galaxy go away to Minnesota on a Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. on the West Coast, right? And so
the first midweek game of the year for the Galaxy.
Yeah, so if you think about it, the number 3 and number 1 team in the Western Conference are playing each other on Saturday, and then as it stands right now, the number 3 and number 2 team in the Western Conference would play each other midweek of that at Allianz Field. So that's the lineup. Then the Galaxy have to go all the way over to Charlotte to play a game. I think a much improved Charlotte FC team that is it's currently in 6th place in the Eastern Conference. So that's not easy. And then finally they get a 2-game homestand, Kevin. But by God, they've been playing almost every game on the road, so the 2 games doesn't even feel like it's long enough. But 2 home games against Houston and then against Dallas to close out May. The Galaxy will go on the road to Chicago in June, then home again very close to each other, Kansas City and New York City, home game, coming up for the Galaxy in June, and then away to Salt Lake and away to San Jose. Just let me know whenever those home games start lining up, because I'm still not seeing them, Kevin. But this is the busy part of this first half.
Right? 5 more games in May, 2 midweek games, long road trip, and the game away at Minnesota. So it's going to be a very difficult month. It started out difficult. It's going to get worse.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, Eric, a $5 super chat, says, Kevin, what does your shirt represent? Kevin wearing the Refugees United. Where did you get that shirt, Kev?
Refugees United, there's a group called IAC, and it's in the South Bay. And what it does is it takes soccer to refugee camps around the world, mostly in Africa. It's working in Mexico now. And it uses soccer to work with kids, to teach them life skills, to keep them from getting bored out of their minds in some of these refugee camps, so there's not much for kids to do. Anyway, it uses soccer in a number of different ways in refugee camps around the world, Azerbaijan, Africa, Mexico, as I mentioned. And at one point, they actually put together a team of people in the camps, and they went and played in a refugee World Cup, the team they had from Darfur. And the team was called Refugees United, and this is them.
There you go. See? Awesome shirt. Raphael, by the way, $5 super chat. Mondays suck, but this pod always allows me to end on a good note. I'll take 1 point in Seattle any day. I know there is a general hey, 1 point in Seattle any day. And then Adam, $5 super chat. This team would not have gotten a point in Seattle last year. Was last year's team last year's team kind of sucked though too. I mean, there's only so many times we can go to this team is better than last year. Yeah, well, they should be better than last year. They are much better than last year. Really, whenever we start start to put all those chips down on the table, Kevin. But last year shouldn't be the bellwether either. I'm sort of always in the, hey, this team is better. This team is better. And I said, I expect them to continue to get better. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm expecting that. And then
you should put up one of those cityscapes and show how it ranks with 2016 and some of those other teams. By the way, Galaxy on a two-game
winless streak.
Mm-hmm. Both games without Dejan Joveljic, so I will just mention that.
Yep, that's the first time this season they've gone two. I had to update one of my charts. The Galaxy right now in 2024. By the way, if we want to talk about Greg Vanney and his team sort of stumbling at a point in the season, this is about the time those teams have stumbled. Right now, the LA Galaxy, we were sort of talking about how this Galaxy team was behind 2021 and 2022, Kevin. Well, they're now level with 2022 at 19 points. The LA Galaxy through the 11 games, 19 points in 2024, 19 points in 2022, 21 points in 2021. The Galaxy had all of 9 points last year through 11 games, so they are 10 points better through the first third of the season than last year.
But as we just said, let's not compare it to last year. Look how they were against 2014, the last MLS Cup championship team.
3 points better.
MLS Cup championship team.
Yeah, they are 7 points better than 2012. 2011, they are 2 points better than 2011, right? So 17 points, 2 points better in 2024. You look at 2005, they had 23 points. So in this particular case, they're 4 points behind 2023, and then 17. By the way, the fact that you can even go back and look at these, and I will say it if nobody else wants to say it, the Galaxy winning MLS Cups is awesome and great. But when you look at the number of teams now, there just isn't as much there's not as much room for error, and you can see that just in these numbers. 2011 had 17 points. The Galaxy are technically 2 points better than 2011. Yeah, but the Galaxy are also in third place in the Western Conference. The Galaxy are in sixth place in Major League Soccer at this point. Bruce's team's always built, Kevin, into the season, and they would get really good towards the end of the year. That was sort of his key. But at the same time, you can go look at these standings. I mean, this is, you're looking at the LA Galaxy right now with 11 games being played. They have 19 points. They are in third place. It probably would have been, if you were to go back to 2014 or 2015, the 19 points probably would have been first place. So there's just all these little things that are sort of stacking up to mean that this is going to be a really tough Western Conference. Not because I think anybody's really that good, Kevin. I just don't think that anybody's going to separate themselves.
But I mean, I love looking at these standings because Vancouver, I really want to see Vancouver do well. I really like their coach. The Whitecaps have struggled for so long. I'd like to see them have a decent season. Colorado, I mean, Kevin Cabral's team with Chris Armas as the manager. It's surprising a lot of people. I know everybody likes Chris Armas, and he's a great coach, and he's had a lot of success. I don't know if anyone expected this. And then you look below the playoff line, and it's almost like the standings are upside down. You got Kansas City, Seattle, and Portland down there.
Yeah, I mean, it just, the teams down like 10, 11, 12, just no momentum on their side whatsoever. Having said that, you look at Seattle and you're like, well, Seattle's not a good, they're only, I mean, maybe I can say only in this, but they're only 9 points behind the LA Galaxy right now. They're really not, it's not like they're that far out of touch, right? They are, 11 points south of Real Salt Lake. Now, we'd expect that those margins widen, but in this Western Conference, I wouldn't be surprised to see them condense more than anything. You can talk to St. Louis, who has 13 points, and they're the last team that's going to make 7 draws. Yeah, 7 draws. They only have 1 loss. As a matter of fact, I think they have the least amount of losses in the entire league. Is that? Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Miami.
Miami has 2 losses. Right now, Columbus has 1. Columbus has 1. St. Louis has 1. So those are the ones. Columbus is.
By the way, speaking of Miami, did you see Messi's second half?
Yeah, it seemed like he knew what he was doing, huh? That guy might be good.
Pretty good.
Especially against what I would consider a pretty good New York Red Bulls team in that Eastern Conference, right? The Red Bulls were up near the top there, and Miami just plastered them. So 12 games played now for Miami, 24 points. You look at their goals, they have a ton of goals. 32 goals for right now. The LA Galaxy at 21, having not scored a goal in consecutive games. Adam makes that point, $2 super chat. No goals scored in 2 games. RSL is the game of the week. This RSL game is going to be a fun fun game. This is the one. This is what you want. It seems like you're going to get Joveljic back. That's at least the expectation. You know you're going to get Ricky Puig back because he's not going to be suspended anymore. That means he gets 3 more yellow cards until he's suspended for the next time. So you have that. I would imagine Mark Delgado also makes it all the way back. So you're going to have him back, and then you get to decide whether you want to start Garces, whether you want to start Cáceres, or whether you want to start Jalen Neal again. My guess is going to be Jalen Neal. Going in for the second consecutive start. But the bottom line is the Galaxy should be more or less full strength for this one, Kevin. And that means that there's probably no excuses. Also still guarding an undefeated record so far at home. So,
well, and this is another reason why that point in Miami was big, because I think, again, I'm going to go back. It's a point I'm going to continue to hammer until it changes. The real lack of depth is a problem with this team. And Greg Vanney knows it. And so he's looking at who he can take up to play on the turf. And he's got a guy with a leg injury and Joveljic, important player. The idea of giving him another week was a big one. He was able to do that. Cáceres probably didn't want to have him play on the turf if Jalen Neal was ready. He didn't know about Delgado clearly, and there's nothing you could do about Ricky Puig. But the 2 guys that Greg Vanney could say, let's hold them out, 2 key players, he kept them off the turf. They're going to be ready, presumably, for this game against Real Salt Lake, which is a big game. Greg Vanney was able to do that and still get a point out of Seattle, and I think that's something that's really important to look at. Greg Vanney rolled the dice a little bit and said, look, let's not push these guys. Again, the game on turf could be slippery, it could be wet. He took the gamble, kept those guys home, and was rewarded with a point, and now he has them healthy and doesn't have to worry about them going against Real Salt Lake.
yes, by the way, I think that the fact that they got a point and that they were able to plug guys in, and I would think that the biggest guy you were missing on the night was probably Ricky Puig, of which you have no direct replacement, and nobody in Major League Soccer does, sort of goes against your whole they don't have depth. I would say there's 2 areas, or there's one area for me where I think the Galaxy don't have depth. That's at striker. So that's, I think, by the way, I don't think Greg Vanney doesn't know that. I don't think Will Kuntz doesn't know that. They're watching the same games we are. We're not smarter than them. I can guarantee you that, right? So they know this as well. That the biggest problem they have right now is not being able to have it. Again, I think that maybe you would have seen a different lineup had Delgado not had to miss that game as well. But you talk about Delgado going down, who's basically having himself a career year this year, and you don't have but you're able to put in Cerrillo. I'm not saying they were like for like. I'm not saying that, Cerrillo is the same player as Mark Delgado, but you look at that, and to me, it tells me that the Galaxy have pretty good replacements across the field for almost every single position. Maybe right back is one where you question a little bit, but I would imagine the Galaxy could probably go 3 in the back if they wanted to, so that way they could sort of alleviate any problems with having to play Cuevas.
They can now.
Yeah,
they can now with Jalen Neal back.
Jalen Neal back with Garces, right? With Zavaleta. Zavaleta played in this game as well. So you have those abilities to have some flexibility everywhere that you need to have flexibility. So for me, I would say, maybe right back is right back in striker, but more striker than anything else. You want glaring holes that need to be filled immediately. It's going to be that second striker. And when I say immediately, I mean the summer. I really do think there's going to be a move. I don't know what that move is going to be, but imagine that the Galaxy still have a U22 spot open. I would imagine they have budgeted for that. I don't know if they have any more TAM after the Garces buy. So that's a good question.
Well, I mean, yes, it seems kind of obvious because you think about coming into the season, they appeared to be a little bit strapped at center back. Zavaleta's played pretty well. Now you get Neal and Garces, Neal coming back and then adding Garces. That's like making 2 major trades for starting center backs. Now you're 4 deep, 5 deep if you include Zavaleta in there at center back. That allows you, as you said, to do some things to strengthen the back line if you have problems, on the outside. And as we mentioned, they're deep in the midfield. You're not going to replace Ricky Puig, but if Delgado's healthy and you got Bergman, Cerrillo now is playing really well. Obviously, Fagundes can play in a lot of different places. They're set at the wings. So when you eliminate all the other positions, the glaring weakness is a backup striker. And I think that's clear that's where they go. You don't need any more defenders, right? Especially at center back. You don't need any more midfielder, but you do need a striker.
Yeah, I think striker. I would also suggest that perhaps the Galaxy could go out and get another winger, maybe at that U22 position. Won't play all the time, but can come in, but also could push one of the other wingers into that center forward role that would fill that Berry spot. Or the Joveljic spot if you needed to do it. We've been talking the ability for Paintsel to do that. We were talking, and by the way, he did sort of fit in there at one point. The Galaxy moved him more into the center.
But do you like him there? I think he's too fast to play there.
there's no
I
such
think it
thing.
neutralizes the speed when he's has to limit himself in the middle of the field. He can do so many more things when he's out on the wing.
Yeah, but he's also probably the best pure finisher on the LA Galaxy. So it's like you got to let that guy. He can cook there. I'm not saying you want him there all the time, Kevin, but in a pinch and a bind, if you need to, yeah, then I don't have a problem with it. He can make runs in behind. By the way, I know Joveljic doesn't do this, and probably because Vanney wants him to keep guys away from the outside wings where they could open up lanes. But, if you're a super speedy striker and stuff like that, you can start a run outside the post and cut across. That way you can actually have some space to run in behind and do things. I mean, it's not illegal. Thierry Henry talks about it like exclusively whenever he talks about how he was playing in some of those positions where he would start wide as a striker and then move himself in and cut in across the field. So, tell Paintsel to run like that. Put him
How
on the
about
left-hand side. Huh?
Billy Sharp. How about him?
Billy Sharp probably wouldn't. I know everybody wants that to happen. I really do. I get it. You guys got hooked on a quick romance. You were in a bar, he was in a bar, you saw him, he saw you. You guys had this hot, intense relationship that like you just burned so brightly within you, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, he's gone, and you're trying to fill that void that Billy Sharp left in front of you. I go back and I look at what Billy Sharp was able to do, and I thought it was amazing that he was able to score the goals he did, being it looked like he didn't have any legs. And looked like he couldn't keep up with the pace of play. And you wanted him to do that across an entire season. I don't think it was going to happen. So
well, how about Carlos Vela's still in town? He's not doing anything.
I was told no. So I'm going with no. I don't think that's happening either. Right? I'm sure the chat room's going to have fun with my Billy Sharp fan fiction there. But no.
Well, especially since we started out the whole podcast talking about a shirtless Greg Vanney.
It looks shirtless. I'm just going to say. Eric, by the way, $10 super chat. Thank you for that, Eric. Do you think our best years were with Beckham? And now he has a lot of pull for Miami because he had like the best year. We're the best years with, David Beckham was a huge part of that, but he went away. The Galaxy still won another championship in 2014. Maybe I'm alone on this. Landon Donovan is great, and one of the all-time greatest. I love Landon. I love David. David was always super kind to me, so I'm gonna only say nice things about David Beckham. He had a tumultuous time with the LA Galaxy, and I think people gloss over that. It ended well, but it didn't start well. So you had that. For me,
well, who fixed that? Bruce fixed that.
Bruce fixed that, and you know who else fixed that? Robbie Keane fixed that. And to me,
what's lost is Tim Leiweke, who was the architect of those teams, told me when I did a Beckham story a couple of years ago, it was just before COVID, he said, we got David Beckham. He was the big name. And Leiweke said, I knew that wasn't the answer. David was a midfielder. He wasn't going to score a lot of goals. He said David needed a striker. And he said the plan was complete and the Galaxy became a good team when Robbie Keane came. It's always been inside the Galaxy front office. It's always been Robbie Keane has always been the guy that was the key to that. And Bruce was key too when they brought him in. Remember, the team was a mess, as you mentioned. Beckham and Landon Donovan were fighting. And one of the things that Bruce would always say is, people would say, Beckham said Bruce was one of the best man managers he ever had. It's, as good as Sir Alex Ferguson, if not better. One of the things Bruce would say is, the conventional wisdom is you treat everyone the same. Everyone's treated the same in our locker room. And Bruce said, that's poppycock. You don't treat David Beckham, the captain of the English national team and a World Cup veteran, the same as you treat a 19-year-old kid that's coming out of the academy. They're different. They've earned different privileges. And Bruce once told a story about Eric Ronaldo with the national team, and Eric Ronaldo asked if he could violate curfew because they were in a town where he had some friends and he wanted to go meet his friends. He said he'd be ready for the game. Well, apparently the story is Eric came back, was not necessarily fit as a fiddle and ready for that game. Bruce played him anyways, and Eric suffered through it. And Eric learned a lesson. Look, if I get that privilege, I have to guard it, and I have to make it worthwhile for both me and the manager. The point is, Bruce was really important in putting that David Beckham team together, but it wasn't complete until Robbie Keane came in.
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, it's always been Robbie Keane was the key to those championships. And I think he was the right piece at the right time, right? It was the final piece of that puzzle that made everything really click, but then you got to see how good David Beckham was. You got to see how good Landon Donovan was. You got to see how good Mike McGee was and everything else. I mean, the Galaxy, the Galaxy were head and shoulders above everybody else at that time. It was fun to watch. But I really like this year's team. I just think it's sort of a blue collar team, right? There aren't any super big names on this. Maybe the most affluent talent that you have on this team maybe is Ricky Puig with everything it's going. But even Joseph Paintsil seems like he's a worker. Gabriel Peck seems like he's a worker. I'm putting myself on Gabriel Peck watch. I need to see more from him. He's young. I'm going to allow him to develop, but I think if you're the Galaxy, you need to see more from him. I think that there's a talent there that it can absolutely be exploited in this league, and that he could be very, very good for a very long time. And we've seen flashes and little fits and starts. I need more from Gabriel Peck. He needs to be a goal-scoring threat every single game. He needs to be goal dangerous every single game. Same with Joseph Paintsil, by the way. I'll say it again. I was disappointed that the two designated players that you have in there don't step up whenever the other designated player is gone. That's something that would have happened.
I think they were trying. I think they were just trying too hard.
I will call the biggest amount of BS on that. How about that? I don't believe that for a second. You can believe that all you want. I think that's a cop-out. Oh, I'm sorry I tried so hard. No, if you tried hard, the ball would be in the back of the net.
They were forcing things that weren't there because they were trying to be that guy that stepped up.
Again, Joseph Paintsil is one of the most expensive players in Major League Soccer. He knows how to play this game. He knows what it means whenever there is more pressure on him. He's playing in Seattle. It's not like he's playing, in some giant stadium with a raucous crowd. I mean, the crowd was there. It was fine. They kept him out of it. It was big enough. I expect more from those guys. It's plain and simple. I think Greg Vanney expects more from those guys. I don't know that he'll say it, but I'll say it for him. Those guys should have been a bigger part in this game, and they could have helped the LA Galaxy steal points there because I think it was there for the taking. There were a couple spots, there were a couple chances they had to smash and grab and get out of there, and they didn't even come close to converting those.
Of course, you're missing the big picture, which is the Galaxy are winless when Greg Vanney wears a sweater.
or doesn't wear a sweater. Yeah, whichever one that is. No, it's an interesting take just to watch this. Again,
Who wears cashmere when it's going to rain?
I mean, maybe he saw that it didn't rain, so he got it nailed. He had a jacket on. What does he carry? And a little like ascot scarf thing that was going on there too. Listen. I know I've done this before. You sit there and you look in the mirror and you're like, man, this looks pretty good. And then you get out there and in the TV lights, all of a sudden it looks like you're naked. That's all I'm saying. It's happened. It's happened to everybody before. You put it on, you go somewhere. Maybe the lights are a little lower than you expected at the bar. You were going to meet Billy Sharp for your rendezvous. You put on the sweater. Next thing you know, Billy thinks you show up without a shirt. It's these things can happen, Kevin. And
this was GQ meets Soccer America.
It's something like that. It's something like that. But no, I want to see more from those guys. I really liked the defense stepping up in this game. I thought Jalen Neal played well. I thought Yoshida played well. Yamane played well. Surreal played well. Aude played outstanding. Such a really, really good game. John McCarthy stepped up. So you had, 5-6 guys out of the 11 that you're starting really play well. Thought Fagundes played pretty well for where he was playing. So where was the other? I needed the game changers, and there were no game changers. Where are the game changers? My kingdom for a game changer. And Miguel Berry was and continues to be an offensive negative effect on the LA Galaxy. That's nothing new. I didn't expect Miguel Berry to be good in that game. I hope nobody else did either, because he certainly hasn't shown that. We
were so high on him in the preseason.
They were not high on him. I will again BS meter. No, they weren't high on him. They were like, he's cheap. If he can give us something, then we're good with it. If he can give us something, he's not. I don't think anybody's going to be disappointed when they find out he makes like $130,000. He doesn't make that much money. He's not that significant. I don't know the only reason people are really crazy about it is because there isn't a backup, a viable backup for Joveljic.
Well, did you think they're giving him the service that he needs? Because he's a big player and he's good in the air, and I haven't seen him attempt a header yet.
I know. Well, I mean, really, he's had one shot on goal and 2 shots total, I think, in all of his time.
And that goal was a right-footed shot from the top of the box.
Yep, absolutely. Let's see. Let me get to more here. I think there was another super chat somewhere. Nope, that was that one. Okay. Adam, $5 super chat. 2 away games after RSL. Minnesota 5:15 has a bye this weekend, so Minnesota's not playing this weekend, and Charlotte 5:18 on turf. Yeah, I mean, it's not great. This road trip will not be kind to the LA Galaxy, so don't expect that. Charlie, $2 super chat. After Saturday, did Will up his search for a striker? I again, and I'll say this: I don't think that Will Kuntz is as stupid as Kevin and I are. I would expect he's smarter. So he also saw this game, and he's also seen all the games leading up to this, and said, "Yeah." But I think that they already have a target in mind for the summer. I think there's going to be a versatile player that's brought in that can sort of fill a couple different roles, and that's sort of been the shape that the shape of the guy they're looking for a little while here. So I don't know that there's more than one move. I think everybody this summer is going to get better, Kevin. But there's only going to be like 7 or 8 games after Leagues Cup. So how much better is it really going to make you after that transfer window, is open and then closes, and you have Leagues Cup and then you come back? There's 7 games after Leagues Cup for the LA Galaxy. Once League Cup starts, you have the end. The end of the season is upon you. As soon as the Leagues Cup break goes, the end of the season is here, which is crazy because it's going to be in August, and you're going to be like, no, the season's not over. Oh, the season is over. Only 7 games remaining after Leagues Cup. Craziness. This schedule
there's a
is
big
nuts.
international break in September, correct?
I believe so.
And I think October as well.
Yeah, so it's going to be nutty. The last 7 games, and then you have Leagues Cup that basically runs through the whole of August. So you get into September, you're going to play some games. There's going to be a break. You're going to play some games. There's going to be, and the season's going to be over. So
everyone's getting worked up about how well Miami's playing, including me. Bessie with 5 assists and a goal in the second half, set all these MLS records. They've scored 700 goals already. Miami's coming back to the field, as you mentioned, in the summer because they're the defending champions in League Cup. That's a big Apple TV thing. I think they're going to be sort of under some pressure to play their top guys, Suarez, Messi. Then there's international breaks in September, October. Messi's got World Cup qualifying with Argentina. He has Copa America this summer. Argentina will make a deep run there. By the time those last 7 games come with World Cup qualifiers in and around them, I think Messi's going to be gassed.
Maybe.
I think Miami comes back to the field, and I don't expect Miami to make a super long. I think they're going to win the Supporters' Shield probably going away because, as you mentioned, there's only 7 games left. But when they get into the playoffs, I think they're gassed. And I don't think Miami's going to wind up holding the MLS Cup.
Adam, $2 super chat says he hasn't noticed Peck in the past few games. I know. It is what it is. That's what I said. Need more. Give me more. We get to see him in person coming up on a Saturday night.
He's out there on the wing. If you're looking for him, Adam,
he's out there. He's out there on the wing. The next match day for the LA Galaxy, match day number 12 for LA. Their 12th game of the season will be against Real Salt Lake, currently number 1 in the Western Conference. We already talked about that. It is Jalen Neal bobblehead night, which Kevin is very excited for. So Kevin will be at this game.
Star Wars night, and guess what? I'm wearing a sweater.
Ooh, which one?
Maybe with an ascot.
So should we get like cashmere tan sweaters and wear them, and with our little I don't know. That seems like too much, and also expensive. Cashmere's not cheap in this economy. Not right now. I think I'm good. Are you good, Kevin? Is there anything else you want to talk about? I
really appreciate the question about Refugees United. Y'all should look up IAC online. They do a lot of good work.
See, there you go. I like that. That's a good shout. Well, I think that's it. Galaxy coming up this weekend against Real Salt Lake, as we have mentioned. That game will kick off at 7:40 p.m. 7:30 p.m. is the official TV start time, but 7:40 p.m. will be your kickoff. LA Galaxy versus Real Salt Lake, MLS season pass, but you're going to be at the stadium. It's going to be a good time, as we said. Jalen Neal bobblehead, Star Wars night, a lot of fun. So looking forward to that. All right, I think that about does it. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter and X is at KBaxter11. Head on over to latimes.com. That's where you can find him. Please do that. Support his hockey coverage, your baseball coverage, anything else, soccer, basketball coverage that you were doing for a while. So there you go. The LA Kings out of the playoffs. Adios. So Kevin back to being a soccer writer. We'll see him out there this weekend. If you're looking for me on Twitter and X is at Guesman, at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. Go to YouTube, Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, any of those places you can find our podcast. That's where you can find Corner of the Galaxy. Just type in Corner of the Galaxy and the LA Galaxy. You'll find us. All right. For Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening. You've been watching Corner of the Galaxy from the box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye.